What up, y'all? What's up? Welcome, Popeye, to the podcast, to the Daily Reps podcast. Popeye, as we know, is a badass, and I have another badass on here, a good friend of mine, Brian Kenney, basically my mentor. I wanted to bring him on here, guys, because he is very knowledgeable, has taken many positions in the fitness industry, worked as general manager for O2 Fitness Centers, as a fitness director at different clubs. Actually, I was going to say throughout the nation, not just in one state. Now that I'm thinking about it, so we would like for you guys to welcome a good friend of mine, a neighborhood friend of mine. I grew up with this guy, a buff, tough guy, Brian Kenney. Brian, thanks, man, for taking time out of your day. I know you're at work, but it's hard finding time for the people on this show. I know it would be difficult because, as stated, these are your go-getters. These are your badasses. These are the people that are busy. So I bet if I had a bunch of lazy pumpkins, it would be a lot easier. So, Brian, I just want to welcome you to the show, man. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us, because I really feel that you have a lot of knowledge in the health and fitness industry. I mean, you have taken every role there possibly could be. I was just going to say, except for maybe the maintenance guy, but I know you've done that too as well, man. So
I've done that. I work for O2 Fitness. Don't forget.
You've done everything. And then, and we talked, Brian and I talked prior to here, and he was asking me, what should I, basically, should I say this and that? I said, I want it unfiltered. I want him to discuss his, the trials and tribulations he went through. I remember a long time ago working for a club, and he called me up, and I warned him about coming in there and taking the position, but he went through it too. So, but I think that's great knowledge, because I'm sure there's many people out there that are still sitting in that job that they just don't like, and they are not getting along with the people that they work with. So I want him to be able to talk about that. But as such, just like I stated, he has a ton of knowledge. Brian, thanks for coming on, bud. I know you're busy. If we have to pause, we'll pause, and then we'll keep things going. But if there was anything that I missed that you did, please tell us a little bit about your background in health and fitness.
I started off. Eric, our I guess backgrounds probably mirror each other in more ways than we probably realize. Like, I started off lifeguarding at the beaches and in Western New York, Lake or Wet Beach and the town hall and all that stuff. And then, training at a small locally owned gym in Buffalo, Terry's Workout Center. Probably to this day, probably one of the better jobs I've ever had, and one of the best bosses I've ever had either. So shout out to Terry's Workout Center in Buffalo, New York. Moving to Raleigh, managing gyms, managing the training departments, learning the business side of it, and obviously living in Florida for a few years, really learning the high volume side of the gym business, and then making my way back to Wilmington 15 years ago to manage O2 Fitness, and to the point now where I'm selling fitness equipment mainly into like homes, and some commercial stuff on the side here and there. But it's been quite an experience, and I would say, I guess, an adventure in a sense. So
right. I mean, your resume is extensive, and as I stated before, Brian truly is a mentor of mine, a good friend. He kind of took me under his wing and got me into the fitness industry, starting in Raleigh, just taking people through your basic stuff in the gym. And then I realized, especially watching the trainers there and talking with Brian, that, hey man, there's people making money doing this, and this is really something I love. So when you were in Buffalo, and you talked about I didn't know, that was one thing I didn't know about you. So you started working, was that right out of college then, Brian?
Well, my first, I was going to make a long story short, but we got some time, so maybe I don't need to make it short, right?
No.
I worked out throughout high school. I was a little guy. I remember being a sophomore in high school, I was 5'2", 5'3", somewhere around there. And, remember going to my dad and saying, hey, am I going to grow? What's going on? And at the time there was a little gym in our hometown. I started working out there. I don't know if you remember Brian Bish. He lived in your neighborhood, but he was a little older than you. He was 1 year older than Joel, but he, we started hanging out after we graduated from high school, and he went to Buffalo State and he got into this major called health and wellness. And I was like, what's that all about? And he said, oh man, you get to learn about exercise and nutrition and everything. And I thought, look, that's awesome. I'd love to learn more about that. And then little did I know I could make a living doing that. So I applied to get in the program. I had to write a letter to the chairman of the department to get admitted because it was such a new program at Buffalo State. So I wrote the letter, I got in, and then I was working at the YMCA off of, it might have been Hurdle. It might not be there now. It was an older YMCA. I was lifeguarding and doing equipment orientations on their old chain-driven Nautilus stuff that was just, it was just so archaic, but that was technically my first job in fitness. And then I was in an anatomy class in my major, and this girl I met, Cheryl, her mom owned a local gym, and said, hey, we're looking for a trainer. Would you be interested? And I said, no, I got a job at the Y. I'm doing equipment orientations. I'm making like $5 an hour or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I'm good, yo.
Yeah, I'm good. And she's like, well, it pays $12 an hour. I was like, what? So I went, I met with her mom, and her mom, she was really cool. So she's like, yeah, how are you? And little did she know, I didn't have any experience training someone, personal training. My idea was like, oh, just give them a spot, make sure, they have a good workout. And that's pretty much it. And she shortly realized that I needed help. And she said, you're going to train me, and I'm going to make sure that you're training right. And just the customer service side of it, and then just the motivational side, not just being a spotter, and because that was my idea. Because when I worked out with all my buddies, we just spotted each other and, whatever. Right. But she took me more on the, hey, you're going to be training people that, are very well off, professionals and stuff like that. So I realized, wow, I need to learn. So, and she did a great job mentoring me as well. So right. I worked there for like a year and a half before I moved to Raleigh.
So you realized that you needed help, and then we're basically dove right into it. Prior to you, our guests on here, there was a few of them, and they said the same thing. They were teaching yoga or doing bodybuilding competitions and basically kind of thrown in there. And it's crazy to think how successful people end up being by doing that. And it's a scary thing for most people to do that, but you dove in there, and then did what you had to do to learn the industry and the customer service. I know that's a big thing with you, and I noticed that was the one thing that I was lacking as a trainer and learned from you. And so now I can kind of see where that started from. And so through that you were working one up as a trainer. Another thing I wanted to state, and kind of going back, is that at this time, Brian, in our high school, there really wasn't a gym. I mean, there was none of the coaches knew about strength training. None of them really incorporated. I know the football team a little bit, and we were in there, but for you to go at that time and start seeking how I could get better, and it reminds me a lot of myself. I asked my mother, when did I start working out? And she was like, in middle school. You were down there with your dad's weights and stuff, because at that time it was really unheard of. There weren't too many athletes that were in the gyms and bettering themselves and getting stronger as compared to now. There's very few high schools right now with without a gym or a strength coach.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in high school, and it was in the basement at the high school, and we had that circuit, and it was an older circuit. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, I swam, that was my background. I ran track and played football my senior year. I did more strength and conditioning and swimming than I ever did any other sport. And just in the beginning of the seasons, we were in the weight room and we were doing more conditioning, like not in the pool. And to me, like I learned just the basics from that, but it was all machine-based stuff, not a lot of free weights or anything like that.
Right.
So, I think, like you said, like, I don't know, like, cause you were a few years behind me, but I don't know if Lakeshore upgraded or when they upgraded, the facilities and stuff like that. But I mean, I can attest to you, when I was there, the strength was terrible. The coaching was terrible. I know we were talking about this not too long ago, how I think a year or two later after I graduated, the new football coach was Mr. Elvin, I think. Yep. And then Strothman took the football and track teams of the states. And I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah.
So
with pretty much the same people, and
yeah,
just tells you what a difference a coach can make, because I think the football team when we were there didn't win a damn game, and then the next year when that coach came in, they didn't lose a game. And
right.
So for swimming, when you were, was it your coach that kind of pushed you into the gym, or was that on your guys' own?
He was like Woody, Mr. Wood, or,
right.
We call him Woody. He rest in peace. He just passed away not too long ago. But he, in my opinion, was probably one of the best coaches at Lakeshore. I can't speak for the basketball, the wrestling, and the, softball, soccer, all that stuff. I know you play. I know Mr. Was it Harrison, right? No, who was your soccer coach?
Mahaney.
Who was it?
Mr. Mahaney.
Yeah, so he may have been a good soccer coach. I don't know, but we used to have the workouts. He'd write them up on the chalkboard in the pool, and intervals, periodization. It was there. Because I remember, like, the more I learned when I was at Buff State, I'm like, wow, he really knew what he was doing.
Right.
With just different styles of training to help build endurance, to help build your sprinting abilities and stuff like that. And I remember my junior and senior year at Height in Lakeshore, there were probably better teams before us, but by far we had more guys on those teams setting records, school records, and even like sectional or county records and stuff like that. And and Mr. Wood, he actually went on. I think he coached at Frontier a little bit. He may have coached at one of the girls' schools downtown. I can't remember what it was, but he coached swimming for a long time, up until probably the last 10 years, I would say.
Right. I remember when he passed away, just how many people were on social media. And I never got a chance because, I was a track and field and soccer guy myself, but just seeing all the things and had people talk about him, and you knew that he was that he knew his stuff and reached a lot of people. And I think that those coaches in my life are a big reason why I got into teaching. And Mr. Strothman was one of them, our track and field coach, who you mentioned, and the same thing, just his knowledge was with the training and why we had to be when we were running, doing this and then conditioning in the pool, which was again another thing that was unheard of. We'd have these hard days, and the next day we were in the pool for a recovery. And looking back at it, I was just like, holy shit, no wonder we were so good. Because you take a thing like track and field, and you got to know, same thing with swimming. It's not just your sprinters. You got these long distance. It's it's a very extensive knowledge of training that these guys brought to the table, and what a difference a good coach makes compared to a bad one. I would say I was, early on in my career, had some really good coaches, and then later on, I felt that it was all that political bullshit, and I don't want to get too much into that. And I'm sure people can attest to that. I always see that, and to me, that's why I love working as a PE teacher with these kids, and seeing my two brothers go on to coaching, because they don't put up with that shit. But to see it to this day still going on really breaks my heart, because a lot of kids get turned off by it a lot from having a bad coach,
And I've never been in a position to coach like in a school. But I've always said, man, if I ever did, I want to take that kid who probably wasn't the best athlete and try to help them and develop and see what we could do to develop their abilities and their skill sets. Whereas, when I was in school, and I only played 1 year of football, I don't know if any of our classmates are going to watch this, but I could attest that I probably was the fastest kid on our team. You know, maybe Tony Seguina could have beat me out. I don't know, but I remember running those sprints and I was always finishing first. And
Yeah.
I rode the pine, which
And-
sucked,
and-
but you know, I rode the bench. I was the first year guy, but well, you couldn't have me doing special teams or something like that.
Right.
So
And probably and you're talking about practice. In practice, you were coming for in the sprints. Yeah.
I worked
But-
hard, man,
Bos-
because I wanted to play. I wanted to get out on the field, and I never did until I had. I think it was like our homecoming game. They let the seniors play. I mean, I went out on a couple special team plays and stuff like that, but never really got my hands on the ball. I mean, I was still kind of a smaller guy back then, so. I mean, I had grown. I was at least 5'8", but I was probably like 130, 140 pounds, you know, so.
Yeah, I remember in track and field watching you. You were fast as hell, man. And then playing, lucky enough, we had a football team, a flag football team that my younger brother and then Brian played, which was a whole shit ton of fun.
That was awesome.
But you know, for a coach to not play you, and you know, that's the one thing I used to hate too, because same thing, and I see so many of those kids that are at the practices busting their ass, and then in the coach's mind, he's probably thinking, you know, because you know Brian is the first year man, hasn't played, I'm not going to put him in there, and to me that's just ridiculous. You know,
Right.
and then you probably right.
So none of those coaches can recognize like, hey, this kid's got some wheels. What can we do? Like, hey, we're not going to throw him the ball 10 times, or we're not going to hand the ball off to him, because there were guys who were probably as fast or maybe just a little slower than I was and had played, you know, little loop football and all that stuff. And it's like, hey, none of those coaches recognize that. To me, it's like, come on, seriously?
Yeah.
I'm like,
would you say then, Brian, with that, you know, that kind of drove?
Right. I could have said, just use me to go out there and just, you know, to take away from someone else so that, you know, they could throw the ball. You know, I don't know.
I've been there, man. I remember I go into about my college coach and he had a little vendetta against me, and every freaking time I stepped on that field, I gave it my all. And I talked a little bit about this. I like to joke around and have fun, but I always was either first or second. And everyone, no matter how, if I had a puke, I puked, you know. But it's just amazing to me, like, to just, you know, that political bullshit and that stuff, how deep it runs in sports and these young athletes too. I'm talking these very young athletes and hearing it from my brother and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask you, Brian, was that, do you feel that the coaches had that you had in your life had a huge role in kind of sending you down the direction you were, or was it just that passion that you had towards fitness that you talked about at a young age and got into it, you know, working out and stuff like that? Or was it a combination of both?
I would say mainly it's probably more on the passion side of just, you know, being a late bloomer and being a smaller guy up until, you know, my senior year of high school, and like shortly after I graduated. I will say, just looking back at, you know, what Mr. Wood had, you know, like the training program and stuff like that he put us through. You know, you always, hindsight, you say, wow, he actually knew what he was doing. But my passion was more about like, hey, I wanted to get bigger. I wanted to get stronger. I wanted to, you know, improve myself. And, you know, like with most of the world deals with the opposite of trying to lose weight and getting better. But there's that, you know, there's that hard gainer group too. And I was part of that group growing up, you know. So, and I know a lot of my friends were the same way. You know, they couldn't gain weight to save their lives. And, you know, the good thing is I'm still kind of, you know, gliding through life on those genetics of not, you know, gaining a ton of weight by, you know, being a slouch.
Well, I mean, it's not like you don't do anything, but so at a young age, you did enough working out that you realized the benefits from it. So, you know, you stated, like, a lot of us, the things that you said, and you said it right off the bat, that about you and I really do mimic each other, because that was the thing. I realized that spending that time in my parents' garage, freezing my ass off, you know, dead of winter in Buffalo, that it was worth it. And I think, you know, a lot of people don't get themselves to that point, and, you know, they get frustrated, and then put it down and think that it's, they don't ever get those benefits from it.
Right. Yeah.
They give up too quick.
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, just my experience with, working with people and clients over 20 years or so, the ones that got the best results were the ones that they listened and they did what I asked them to, or guided them to. The ones that obviously didn't get the results, they're looking for that quick fix or the easy way. And, with my most successful clients were the ones that when they would get results, I'm like, well, what are you doing? They're like, I'm doing what you told me to do. And I'd be like,
I was just about to do this. Do that. I was just jinxed, dude, because I was just about to do the same thing. Because as a trainer, and prior to this, we had a life coach on, and he talked about. I said, already from these podcasts, I'm getting, women and people asking, if I hate exercising, what can I do? And he stated right in there too, one of the best things you can do is find somebody that knows their shit and that's been expert at it and makes a ton of sense. And so, after that, you worked as a trainer, and then, if I'm not mistaken, then went to the fitness director position. That was it, like your next job, your next step up, would you say? Or
actually, my the RTP club in Durham or whatever that is, that job was a promotion to fitness director from a trainer, because I was working in one of the Raleigh clubs and had done a good job of building my clientele and allow my clients to see the results. So they had that opening position. I applied for it and I got promoted. So it was my first management fitness director job, and I was pumped to be in that position, because I thought, wow, if I can build my clientele and help people get results, now I'm in a position to help other trainers do the same thing and build a program that, from a monetary standpoint, people can say, wow, he's really making a change over at that other club, and obviously just keeps going from there. So,
yeah. So, I mean, obviously doing so well for yourself, but the company realized that, you would have a lot to basically drop knowledge to the other trainers in there to help them get up to the same point that you were. And that's when then I ran into you there. And so, besides, I'm assuming too that you still continue to train. I mean, I think throughout, even when you were a general manager of the club, you were still training people.
Yeah.
So you love that.
The only time I didn't really train, it was probably for about 2 years, is when I lived in Tampa, because I was an operations manager, and it was so busy. There wasn't a lot of time to have clients, but it wasn't until probably that last year that I lived down there is when they created that whole personal training manager silo. And as soon as they did that, I jumped right over into that position, because the management side of it was great and fun, but it was all business, and it was all, like the customer service side of it, the client retention or membership retention side of it, which was great, because a lot of that had to do with training and a lot of the fitness programs that you developed and designed to keep people engaged, keep people coming into the gym so they wouldn't quit. Because the gyms that I managed in Florida, they were all month to month. There were no long-term contracts. So if you did a shitty job, you were going to lose a member. So if your gym was dirty, they were going to leave. If the equipment was broke, they were going to leave. So the emphasis on that position was to keep it clean, keep the members coming in, and obviously give them the best experience and customer service they can imagine, so that they stay and they don't go to the competitor down the road. So,
right. And you learned this stuff basically just kind of. I mean, you had no, besides the training things, you kind of just went one step up and learned this kind of as you went. If I'm right.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the, I guess, pleasure of working with some pretty cool people in the last 20 years. I mean, Kevin Headley and Chris Gallo and some of the guys in Florida. I mean, I worked for, Jeff Dyer, who owned all those Lifestyle Family Fitness. He's a icon in the industry.
And that was another name.
Yeah, and he was one of the reasons why I wanted to go to Florida was because the guy was growing his club so fast. I'm like, I want to work for that guy. What is he doing? And when I was there, I met some other pretty cool people that were really knowledgeable in the business, on the training side, the business side, and some of these people today, like it's so, the world's so small. You don't realize that I used to work as a fellow operations manager with the current CEO of Orange Theory Fitness. Isn't that crazy? One of the CEO was a guy that I used to rub elbows with in the operation manager meetings at Lifestyle Fitness.
When now Orange Theory is like everywhere.
Oh, and it's huge. And then some of the guys who are now some of the higher ups with Crunch Fitness, the Crunch Fitness franchise, same thing. I started with them. Like Kevin LaFerriere and Dave Carney and stuff like that. Those guys are, to me, they're like icons in the business of fitness and growing, franchise or club chains to the point where they become publicly traded companies. It's unreal.
Yeah. And that's the side of that I really wanted to hear from you too about that. And you talked a little bit about, retaining the members there, because you have all those types of gyms like Planet Fitness and stuff that don't, they offer training, some don't, and they're really cheaper gyms. And what do you so I was going to ask you, like, do you feel like what keeps most people coming to you, would that be, like, in my opinion, would be the results,
getting results. Like getting results. I mean, like, you feel part of a community, or you feel part, like people, like when you walk in the door and, the person at the desk or some of the trainers, they know who you are. They know your name. So you feel part of something, it automatically builds loyalty to that, gym or club, or whatever you want to call it, where, I can't speak for like the Planet Fitnesses and their whole, business model, but I have read information saying that they don't really give a rat's ass if you come or not, and to me, it's like, well, how can you build a business on that? Well, because it's only $10 or $15 a month, they're not even going to check their checking account to see if, oh man, I got billed for that month again. Oh, it was only $10, no big deal, whereas the gyms that I've always worked with were probably the lowest price point was maybe 35 all the way up to, the mid 60s. So like, if you didn't deliver, they're going to cancel. So you had to build the programs to make them feel welcome, get them results, and just make it a lifestyle. I hate to coin that term, but
but like a community and a family that you said, and starting from people at the front desk and the places that I noticed that you were at, they did have just quality people in and out of it, and it was like that, a comfortable feeling. And the bodybuilder guy, Aaron Braun, that we had on the show a bit, he talked about just that family of.
Sorry, bro.
Yeah.
Thanks for calling US Fitness. This is Brian.
3. And so on the topic of community, and like I said, the prior guest to you, the Aaron, who was like a champion bodybuilder, and he talked about of making the gym like a family, and he stated how much it just just having it, that feel and that comfortableness of it, and how essential it was for just somebody like his stature that just loves the gym already, how it kept him and really engaged. And I can attest that to myself. I know at O2 Fitness too, they also had like the rooms for women, and where they kind of could separate themselves, and we talked a little bit about that, but that comfortableness, you feel like that, so it plays a major role in retaining customers and keeping them coming through that door.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to, make the customers feel comfortable, especially on the female side, and you had your other guest, and he's a bodybuilder, and that was always the thing with O2, we didn't want to have those big intimidating guys in there where it would, scare off the average, house mom who just wanted to come in to, I hate to use the word tone up, but tone up their, their arms and their legs and stuff like that. So interesting enough, we didn't have a big bodybuilder following at O2, not until later. Like you remember the beginning, it was just regular people, professionals, and they did have those cardio cabana areas where you could be somewhat secluded and have a little more privacy. And the cardio deck was way up on the mezzanine, so you weren't front and center, right in the free weight area. So you had, you were definitely away from like the main, free weight or fitness side of the thing. So you could get, a little more privacy, and just the way that facility was laid out, it wasn't really built kind of like all the gyms are nowadays. The big box gyms with everything's wide open and you can see everything. That was the one thing I did like about O2 was like they created these zones or areas where it made it a little more personal, and you didn't have to be front and center, especially if you were conscious about the way you looked. You could kind of go off in a corner and work out and not be, feel like you're getting stared at by, a million guys. The good side or the bad side, if you're out of shape or if you're in good shape, because I know there's a lot of people that don't want to be stared at. They just want to go in and get their workout and get out. So,
Right. Yeah, and I'm glad you kind of talked about that, because Aaron brought that up, and to hear both sides, let alone the manager, but also from Aaron, because I think what he would attest to is that being one of those bodybuilder guys, he didn't want to be that person that scared person off. And in fact, he wanted to include people into what he called his family, which is the gym, which is a community. When you're going consistently, like in order to get the results, you want that comfortableness. And the gyms that you did work at, they really were, and they pandered to that and kept those things in mind. And then as a fitness director, the next step up was a general manager, and now you're talking about the running of everything in the gym. And while we dive into that, one of the first things I wanted to ask you as a trainer yourself, and myself as a trainer too, the certifications. Damon and I brought Damon on the show, and if nobody watched that show, was a strength and conditioning coach that I worked with down in Florida, a trainer, worked with the Dolphins and stuff. And, he talked about, and I would agree with him about, it really wasn't the certifications, because I'm sure you would say that, Brian. How many people in the years were like, oh shit, you got your CSCS, and oh, you got your NSCA? Very few. But for the hiring the matter of it, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about, was that, you had mentioned too a while back that it did matter, that you looked at to see there were certain certifications that you looked at in the hiring process, and then there were some that you just literally just took that resume and was like, no,
it's garbage. Yeah. Like especially just from my experience, the trainers that had the NSCA, like the CSCS, or they had the NASM, or they had like ACE or ACSM, I knew they had a good background. They knew the health and the wellness and the exercise science. There some of the other certifications that were out there, they had open book tests, and it's like, all right, well, how much do you know about the body? Like, if and I always said, for example, it's like with NASM, you're trying to teach them how to do an exercise and their body's doing something crazy. Do you know why? Or with the NSCA, it's the program. It's like, how do you take someone who's a poorly conditioned person or athlete to a point where they're now an elite level or they're super high fitness level? It's not just, hey, get in there and lift weights and hopefully you turn into Mr. Olympia in a year. So
yeah, or turn themselves into the trainer, because what I've seen over the years is that a lot of trainers basically give their workouts to their clients.
Right. Yeah. What worked for me will work for everyone. No, so.
Yeah. And it doesn't. Everybody's, like you stated, you got some people that and I've been there with those people that are just, they're not doing what you're asking them to, their body's not moving, and they're you know, you got to kind of sit back and think, you know, why not? Or, you know, what can I do to better them and not injure them? And because in my mind, you want to ask and dig people, because this is your body. You wouldn't just go to some quack doctor, right? You wouldn't just go to some quack doctor and be like, yeah, prescribe me some shit, and the guy doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground.
Right.
You know, because it is, if somebody's teaching you something incorrectly, that now your body can do that, and it literally can do more harm than good. And so it's a big thing. And I do agree though with Damon though too, because you do have somebody. I mean, I know for myself, I don't keep my certifications all up to date and that stuff. But I'm constantly you know, nose in the book and reading nonstop. Whereas other people are just feeding you the workouts that they themselves do, you know. So to hear, I wanted to make sure that we touched on that before that. But, you know, tell us a little bit about where, you know, I know you had some good times as a GM, and then you also had some very trying times as working as a general manager.
Yeah, there were times, like, especially when I first got my first general manager job was in Raleigh, the Pulse company. They purchased a facility. It was the Highwoods Wellness Center, and it was a club that just, you know, it was in the middle of a corporate center, kind of like RTP. So not a lot of residential. The only time members were really there, like during lunchtime. So we'd have a slamming lunch and early morning, but then the nighttime, nothing. So your typical peak time in a gym starts around 4:30, 5 o'clock. I mean, everyone else, it would be a ghost town in there. And, you know, selling memberships, because that was, you know, as a general manager, now I had to learn, okay, not just training anymore. Now I got to sell the membership, which is truly what drives a gym, is the membership. I don't care what any owner says. It's the membership. It's not training. Training is a member retention tool. So, yeah. But the membership, we struggled selling memberships, and Pulse did a upper management change, and I had the new CEO guy came in, and he sat down at the desk with me and point blank told me, you know, if I was here when they were about to promote you, I wouldn't have done it. And that was literally is when I started updating my resume.
Smart move.
And that's when shortly, I think it was like 3 or 4 months after that, I moved to Florida. I was like, I'm getting out of here. I'm going to get fired twice from this company. No, we can talk about that another time. So
yeah, right. But realizing that,
you know, then, you know, in Florida, was good times. I mean, I learned they had a great upper management that was all about developing their younger managers. They knew I didn't have a ton of experience moving down there, and they had, you know, they had the operations side and they had the sales side. So my job was to really run the gym, and they had a manager that would run the membership, you know, and we both managed the club. And I learned a lot on that side from the sales manager, because they were all about the numbers, hitting those sales numbers, selling memberships. I was all about like supporting them, keeping the club clean, making sure those trainers were giving great workouts, and making sure the equipment was up, you know, up to par, and no downtime, stuff like that. So it was a team effort to really run those clubs. And I learned a lot on the sales side, and just the systems they put in place that when I was at the Pulse, non-existent. It was just like throw a dart at the board and see what you hit. Whereas when I was in Florida Lifestyle, they had systems so that if you called the gym to look for information, or if you walked in the door, they would capture your information, and not like high pressure sales to get you to join, but they just wanted to make sure that either, you know, you got all the information you wanted, and you either did join, or they would say, okay, this wasn't the right fit for them. But there wasn't one person that ever called, well, I shouldn't say one, but majority of the time, every single person was accounted for that actually called or walked into the gym and exhausted to the point where they said, look, I don't want to join the gym. And then we were, okay, we'll take you off the list. But, you know, little systems like that, it was like, wow, just tracking stuff. And just like, you know, just like in a program for a client, like you got to get them at one point and get them to here. Same thing. Like you stepped into the gym looking for a membership. Now I got to get you to the point where you're joining. And there was a system for that. So
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that system, because in my mind, that was the first thing that popped into my head that you just stated, was that how much it relates to the trainer too, because you have those certifications. And I did take one of those just easy certifications in the beginning that, like you said, that basically gave you the book. But those top of the line, the more expensive, I mean, you get what your money paid for, the more studying, but they would give you a system like, all right, if I get a person here and I start them here, and what are the exercises here? And it's not like, it's everything set in stone, but at least you have a pathway. And the same thing with like you stated the same thing that in running a club, to have that system. And I'm sure you probably use that same system as you jump from club to club, and still went back to it.
Yeah, I mean, when I left Florida and moved to Wilmington to run O2, it was almost the same thing. They didn't have systems. So I remember reaching out to some of my co-managers in Florida. I said, can you send me the guest register? Can you send me they had like these books that the membership people it's like a day planner. They keep track of all this stuff. So I remember starting to implement that at Mayfair. And I don't remember if you remember Erin Ardler, and then there was another girl, Bethany, I think. All of a sudden, we went from selling like 20 memberships a month to like 120, 150 a month. And Michael and Kevin were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I just used some of the systems and stuff that I learned when I was in Florida and implemented it up here. And, so then they kind of implemented it across the board in all the other clubs. And, and that company has grown leaps and bounds to the point where I feel like they still use some of those systems today.
Oh, absolutely. I remember when you started there, but I didn't know. I mean, you basically started it from scratch and had it. So, I mean, and I know as a trainer then, and then working with you at that club, because I left that club before you went there. And then when you came back, I was like, all right, I'm back in here, because I knew, exactly what you stated, that it was going to be that much better. But I know the long hours that you put in there, Brian. I mean, you were there. I mean, you might as well have just slept there, man.
I mean, I probably would get there. I wasn't too early. I mean, unless I had a client, because that's when I started training clients again. But I'd get in there probably like 8 o'clock in the morning, but I wouldn't leave till 7:30, 8 o'clock, maybe even 9 o'clock sometimes, because I just wanted to make sure that gym grew. And it was such a beautiful gym, back then. And today it still is. It's just, they need to renovate still and all that. But a lot of those systems were, key into driving a membership program. And then, the training did take off as well. I mean, the training numbers got better over time. It wasn't an instant from the time I moved up there or came into town, but shortly after that, I mean, I remember that club doing 40, 50,000 a month. And this is, 2006, 2008. So pretty good numbers back then. Okay numbers now.
And the one thing I wanted to just have you talk a little bit about, because if there's anybody listening that they're interested in the path that you went down, and maybe considering a path in fitness management and club management, but there was also some very trying situations that you went through there and back. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to let you talk about it, Brian. You talk about whatever you feel that you want to, but just some kind of advice for people, and just some things to watch for, again, I want you to talk about it for the fact that, that everything's not gravy, when you're and working your ass off, and then you come across, of course, some stumbling blocks, just like in life.
Yeah, you'll get, I mean, just in my time at O2 here in Wilmington, there were some good times, and you were part of that. And then there were some really bad times. When you manage a gym that's brand new, you don't really have any maintenance issues. All you got to do is, do preventative maintenance on the equipment. It should pretty much run itself, wipe everything down, and it's pretty much good to go. And then your personnel, your team that you have in place, if you've got good personalities and people with good attitudes, it's easy. People want to work, and you create like a relationship, within the team that you have in your gym, which trickles down to the members as well. Because if I've always said, if your employees are happy working for you, and this is across the board in any kind of industry or business, if your employees are happy working for you, guess what? Your customers are going to be happy. So some people say, well, your customers got to be happy. I'm like, no. The employees. If your team or your employees are happy, you treat them well, you treat them with respect. I'm not saying you have to pay them millions of dollars, but you make them feel wanted and valuable. It's going to go so much further in your gym business than you could imagine, because that front desk guy who makes I don't know what minimum wage is now, probably $7.50 an hour, who makes $7.50 or $8 an hour. If he feels like he's part of something, every single person that walks on the door is going to get a great greeting, a warm welcome. I don't want to sound, like I used to when I managed clubs, but it's the truth, But if you're miserable, there were times at O2 where, they changed compensation and there were pay cuts for membership people and trainers, and you could see the attitude starting to change. And then, members were starting to quit. All these little problems started popping up, and not to, harp on the bad times, but I feel like the tide turned where the employees weren't valued and they weren't, treated like they should have been when they were, I'm saying, that first 5 years of managing that gym. And it was a shame because you lost some talented people, on the membership side and the training side. I can tell you from the time you were there up until probably 2010, 2012-ish, it was the same trainers. None of them left, except for maybe one here, somebody moved or something like that. But for most part, I didn't have trainers jump and ship to go to the gym down the road, or jump and ship to open their own business. Where you see that nowadays, it's like night and day. It's like, oh, I started at O2 and now I'm running my own business. I'm like, why did you stay at O2? Oh, the pay sucks. They don't really care about you. I'm like, that's too bad. Right. Because when I was there in the beginning, that was not the case. No. It was a good, and the change, whether it was a business decision or just a leadership, I can't really comment on 100% on why that stuff changed, but I do know, like, when things are good, I always looked at what are we doing right now that's so good, as far as like keeping members and growing a membership base and seeing your personal training numbers grow, and clients are getting great results, and members are staying because they feel part of a family. That's the only thing I can look back is like, I had really good team players. I had a really good staff. Whereas, now I'm trying to plug a position and it's hard to fill them because they realize the pay is not that well, or they realize that, oh, I'm just here to punch in and then punch out. I don't really care who that guy is who just walked in, or you're training and you're charging a lot, but you're not getting a lot. So from the percentage split. So it's like, I went back there for 6 months. I tried to get you to work for me, and you're like, I don't know, BK, pay isn't really that good. And I'm like, I tried my best to do a sales job on you, but it didn't work. So,
yeah. And I knew just kind of, I knew how it was that time. And then, what got me to go in there the first time was that I knew that you had more control over things, and you realize that just the things that you just touched on there is huge. Brian, what it thinks to me about it that comes to mind, man, is and being a teacher here in North Carolina, that we're some of the most underpaid, and the realization of, and watching so many good teachers leave for that reason, and then to hear you talk about the trickle down effect that it has, that that you just stated there, it then it has effect on the membership and the overall club. And so, education, I don't think anybody would dispute to me, nor health. I feel like those are huge things that people need that lead to success and everything else. And that's why I started this channel. But, in education, they start cutting these funds, and they're already preaching about it with this, because of the virus and things like that. And all that's going to do is have, and Brian stated that it's not just in the fitness industry. it's going to have a trickle down effect to the kids and students. It's the same. It's the same thing that you're stating there. And so, I wanted you to talk about too, Brian, going through all the stuff that you have and your knowledge of it, the runnings of a club, the coronavirus, man, it's here to stay. It's had a devastating effect on the fitness industry in some of the past guests that we had on here. And that's why I wanted to bring them on here and get their take on running a club now and just the devastating effect that it has had on them and knocked them down on their asses. And I mean, where you're at now though, and selling equipment, we know that that's a hot thing too, but where do you see the fitness industry now kind of going because of this and the effect that it has had on the fitness industry as a whole?
I could be completely wrong and off base on this. I initially talking to, I can't remember if it was one of my higher ups or one of the owners of the store, but I said, I can see I feel like the big box, the Planet Fitness style gyms probably going away if the virus doesn't completely go away. If it's still around, I can't imagine how they can survive because their business plan is for high volume, lots of members. If you got to restrict, they're putting, millions of dollars in those facilities. I don't know if you saw the one over here, the one that just opened up, the Planet Fitness. The amount of money they had dumped into that place. And I know they get probably pretty good deals on the equipment, but still, I can't imagine how they can survive unless this whole virus, goes away completely and they can, not have any restrictions as far as how many people come into the gym. I really feel like kind of smaller, volume clubs or studios may thrive a little more just because they can control the amount of people that come in and keep it safe, and they don't have all that overhead to worry about. If it's, you got a 3,000 square foot facility with, a handful of cardio machines, and you can space them out and you can limit how many people come in. I feel like that might be a good trend. And obviously the home gym is huge. We have, over the last 6 months, we've had record setting months in sales. The mobile trainer, it might be a big thing, where you go to people's houses because they've already got the equipment. You just go in there and you take them through their workouts. You might not be able to cover the amount of clients that you used to by everyone coming to you, but you might be able to charge them more because they're not paying for membership anymore. They're just paying for you. So the whole idea is if you're charging $50, $60 an hour, maybe you can charge them more because you got to pay for your car, your gas, you got overhead, in your transportation, and maybe some of the, equipment that you may or may not have to bring with you. So, I could be wrong, but I just feel like that could be a good trend. We're getting smaller facilities. I can't see these big boxes surviving unless the virus disappears.
Completely goes away. I agree with you. I don't see how it is going to go away, and a vaccine's not going to kill it completely off. And it's just another thing that shoot, I know my mother made my father stop going to the gym because he was constantly bringing some shit and she would get sick, and so she put a stop to that. But we had Carrie Lawson on here, a good friend of mine who runs a private personal gym, and working for her, and I felt for her so much this summer, and I kept telling her that same. So it's nice to hear you say that, Brian, that you feel the same way, because I kept saying, Carrie, people are gonna pay more. Why wouldn't you pay more to go to a facility where it is a family, a community? Because those smaller type gyms, it really is, and it's more comfortable and welcoming, and the trainers are more knowledgeable. I was just telling her the story. It was shit. I used to go to the gym when I was back home in Buffalo, and I literally walked in the door, Brian, for 2 months. I had a free membership because the front girl was constantly at her phone, was constantly texting on her phone, because those big box gyms are exactly what you said. So until my mother was like, "Oh my God, Eric, I can't believe you." And I was like, Mom, I'm going to keep doing it. Are you kidding me? And she's like, you better go. And so only reason I did was because to make my mother happy. I didn't, and to get her off my damn back, but yeah.
No, that's so true, man. Because that person at the desk, they didn't give a shit. They're like, whatever, I'm making $7.50 an hour. Let them in. Who cares?
Right. I'm here at 5 in the morning.
But if you're making
me.
Right. Well, yeah, if you were making maybe $8.50, $9 an hour, and like, hey, they really care. They were like, hey, you, get over here, right?
Yep. So, right, because they're worried about their job. Yeah, they want that job, and they're worried about it. But I agree with you, man. And I kept trying to tell her I feel like it's gonna push people her way. And and people, I have people who are listening to this, and here's another person. You get what you pay for. You go to McDonald's, you're gonna get shit food. It's just you get what you pay for, and there's nothing more valuable than your time and your health. And and people, if you get a better trainer, you're gonna get the better results. If you get a
give me a second.
Yeah, the coronavirus has had a massive effect, and so that's the reason I started the podcast. Was two reasons: to kind of push people in the direction of buying programs off me. Let's get real. And the second thing was to drop people in health information, because I realized I've been blessed to work with people like you and a lot of good, knowledgeable people that could drop little tidbits of information to help people get their health back on track. And as stated before, there's no other time in history, my opinion, there is no other time in history that people need to get their shit together and their health together than right now. Yep. And and this is a wonderful way to do that, and to get people to know that I'm not here. I've been doing this for a long time and work with some wonderful people. I know what I'm doing, and hopefully get some people to my way, because I know it right now. A lot of people are scared to go to the gyms, and they're looking for really good workout programs to do it, in their house. And so to hear you say that, that's good stuff, Brian. I wanted to talk to you. Of course, the Daily Rep Show is all about getting guests on here that are knowledgeable in health and fitness, but also hearing the things that kind of make them tick. And so for me, Brian, one of the things was that you just talked about was that knowing at an early age that you wanted to better yourself, and you took it into the gym and working out. What are the things that besides that you feel kind of keep you going, keep you motivating, other daily habits that you do that keep you moving forward?
Nowadays it's a little different. Obviously, I have two little girls, and I know we spoke earlier. I shared with you, teaching my 5-year-old that how to ride a bike without training wheels, and here I am running sprints up and down the road, and I'm gassed. And I'm like, and I'm not, I'm not 25 anymore. I'm not even in my 30s. I'm in my high 40s. So one of those things like, well, I definitely got to keep my cardio or that side of it going so that I'm not winded, because they're 5 and 3. They're not older. I've got another 10, 15 years of running after these two. And the strength side, I've always felt good about. I may have lost some strength over the years, but I'm still pretty strong. I can move some stuff still, and I can move some heavy things. But the whole cardio and just staying fit and being able to run around with them, to me is key. And obviously nutrition, not eating. There's a lot of crappy foods in my house now. They're over the last 5 years, and there was 5 years ago. But, shoot, I gotta take this.